Purchase orders is a tedious and time-consuming process in most businesses. Today, I'm with Maarten Kruger from Tech Genius, and we will be discussing if you can automate the process. Welcome, Maarten.
Thanks, Melanie. You can definitely automate purchase orders, and you're right, can be very tedious and time-consuming for many businesses. Just to make it practical, an imports-exports company that we have a good relationship with, it's one of our clients. It's incredibly complicated, intricate process. You can just imagine all the moving parts, bringing things into the country, getting it out of the country, especially if you have businesses who outsource a lot of functions. And it's quite a common thing these days. It's often very cost effective to rather outsource certain things like warehousing, transport. You're not going to have your own transporting fleet, obviously. So if you're dealing with all these outsourced services, every time you want something done, it's not just a matter of giving an instruction or talking to an employee. You're actually dealing with the outside party. Now, you can just imagine the more things you outsource, the more purchase orders you need for everything. So yes, it's not just a matter of, Johnny, do this. Now it's an official instruction. So you better make sure that your official instruction is correct. And because it's so tedious and people do it, all the time, it's very easy for mistakes to slip in. So what you want to do is you want to have the machines prevent common mistakes and obvious mistakes, and try and populate these purchase orders as much as possible with existing information that's known. And so the person can just do instead of having to populate everything in a purchase order, is just having a look over and having a common sense check before it's sent out. So that's typically what a business requirements is in terms of purchase orders.
So Maarten, I would imagine that it would also, if you're still doing it manually, go through quite a few hands in a business, where if it's automated, it can be handled with a one-step process.
Yeah, let's say, for example, you write up your purchase order. Now you need to give it to somebody to double check. Now there's a delay. So let's say you email it to somebody. How long before he reads that email? What if he doesn't view it? Now he replies back to you and says, all right, okay, it looks okay, you can send it. Now you have to go back, find the purchase order, send it out. So just in that approval process, it makes sense if you do it with an automated system, the people who are doing the authorization can log into the system once a day. And if there are 20 purchase orders for them to approve, they can see it in one single place and just click 20 times or have an approve all button and it's done. So there's less of a time delay between approvals, and people can batch it. So, if your emails, you can't control when somebody's going to send you an email, so it's more difficult to batch. Sure, you can probably do it once a day, but there's so much other stuff in between, the clutter and things. So there's definitely a big advantage as far as that's concerned.
Maarten, I would also assume with the global pandemic, with COVID, and people working remotely, that an automated system would also make it easier, because you don't always know when you will be able to get hold of somebody, or if somebody falls ill or something like that. You don't have a problem with the system falling ill unless something big crashes or something huge happens. So that solves that problem as well.
Yes, let's say, for example, let's go back to the email example. You send an email to somebody, but that person is not, it's out of office. They forgot to put an out of office reminder. Maybe became ill, never set up an out of office reminder. So you're waiting for authorization. That person didn't receive the message. Now somebody else is standing in for that person. He might not have access to his email. So, it's those typical scenarios where things start to slow down and become inefficient. Now, if you have a system and there's somebody with a specific user right who can log in, it's not just in a specific person's inbox. Anybody who's got sufficient user rights can go into the system, see all the purchase orders that needs to be approved. And this can happen any time of the day, anywhere in the world. So it's much more efficient. And the other thing is also an audit, in terms of an audit trail. Audit trail is so important, having a record from beginning to end. When was the purchase order created? Who authorized it? Emails can be deleted, it can be lost. And what's the schlep of having to go into multiple people's inboxes to try and picture this whole flow together of what happened with this one single purchase order as it went from person to person. And now you have to go dig through emails and whatever. Whereas if you do it with an automated system, you have a timestamp on every action that was taken place from beginning. What was the creation date time? Who was the user who created it? What was the authorization date time? Was it accepted or rejected? If it was rejected, what was the reason? So you've got a complete audit trail at your fingertips for anybody who's got sufficient user rights.
So Maarten, I would also assume that it would make workflow within a business a lot easier.
Yes, especially when the workflows are complicated, and imports and exports is a very good example of that. There's so many things that you have to do. You can't skip steps. Now, human beings, we tend to take shortcuts. You know, we're not machines. Machines will always 100% of the time follow the exact same steps. It won't skip a check. You know, it won't miss a beat somewhere. So definitely in terms of workflow and having a consistent workflow where you know everything is done all the time, definitely automating the system is definitely the best as far as that's concerned.
So Maarten, what factors would come into play if you consider automating your purchase order process?
The first things we usually do is we try and understand what types of purchase orders there is in a specific business. And then we will often classify suppliers in the same way. So let's, for example, you have a transport purchase order going out. Something that we can also do is that we usually do is we will classify which of your suppliers actually provides transportation services. So don't try and send a transportation purchase order to a company that does warehousing, for example. I know it sounds, you know, like a very simple thing to do, but if you have somebody standing in for somebody temporarily, these things are really quite invaluable because they usually, and it also depends whether you're using the same service providers all the time or whether you use a large amount of them. So this is some of the basic mistakes that you can prevent. So it's the matter of classifying purchase orders, classifying your suppliers, understanding in which how the purchase orders fits into your business process, in which order they should take place, which of them are mandatory, which are optional, what are the business rules when certain ones are optional and mandatory. Yeah, did I answer your question?
It does answer my question. Thank you, Maarten. So Maarten, how can you extend the process to more than just an internal tool?
Yeah, so what we've been talking about is how can you send out the purchase order in a quick manner. But there's a different angle on this because you're just thinking of internal efficiency. But you're only as good as your service suppliers, and you're only as good as the turnaround time of your service suppliers. So you can actually extend this system. Let's say, for example, it's a web application. That you can have it as a progressive web application or a mobile app that you can give to your suppliers as well, which means that the people who need to do the service delivery can also get immediate push notification on their mobile devices, and they can respond much quicker, which is a big benefit for you as well. So it's a win-win. Not only are you improving your side, but you're actually giving tools for your suppliers to perform better as well.
So Maarten, what I've learned today is that you can take the tediousness out of the process when you automate it. You can make sure that you don't make any mistakes. You can make sure that your suppliers get the notifications when they're supposed to get it. And that's the beauty of automating a system like your purchase orders.
Well said, Melanie.